Good Wednesday morning of the 17th week. I kind of botched that yesterday's, because it was about the weeds in the field. I never really got on. The great scandal is why there was so much defection in the early church. And they said it was the devil that did it. Remember Flip Wilson, the devil made me do it. It's still a scandal in the church. You wonder why, what happens. I wonder myself. I'll just share it with you because I saw not defection in the sense of rebellion, but I saw so many men leave the Alpha. I saw so many people leave the faith. One of the things that strikes me so strongly is so many of them. I mentioned that before on one of these videos that I saw so many people who were people of faith and who lost their faith in the course of their lives. Some of it, I think, was due to the significant disruption of the 60s in the church and beyond. See, faith is lived in the church. It's lived culturally as well as faithfully. In other words, it's not just a cognitive experience where you know what you believe or you believe and you choose to believe. It's also an experience within the culture. And the Catholic culture was disrupted volatilely in the 60s because of the council and the post-council. And for so many, it was disorienting, I think. It wasn't the work of the devil. It's what happens to cultures. But I think that's one of the saddest things in my life, is see the enormous defection from the faith. It wasn't, I laugh about my Italian heritage. We go to church 3 times a year, whether we have to or not. You know what I mean? But this wasn't the case of that. These were people who were really committed committed Catholics who lost their faith. I don't blame them. I don't blame them. I blame us. I believe those of us in the clergy. I believe what we preached. I believe we didn't care enough. We didn't love them well enough. We presented a non-credible Christ to them. I mean that. I remember saying that, what did we do? How did we drive you away? What did we do to you that drove you away? It's not where you see people just lazily not practicing the faith. The old joke, go 3 times a year to church. It's not. They reject the faith, and in many instances with anger. That's sad for me. Because in the Alpha I learned to love the church. In all her fleshiness, I learned to love her. But I don't ask her to be other than God's presence in the flesh of the humanity itself. I don't expect it to be innocent and angelic. I expect it to be what it is. The human community is fleshy. But there is beauty in the flesh. I said that to a very close friend of mine who left the faith. I said to her, the church is beautiful. She says to me, it's ugly. I can't refute ugliness. But I also knew one has to learn to see. I remember my friend Sarah's, I told you this 118 times. Her grandmother said to me, before you can love Sarah, you must first see her. That's the truth of the church. Before you can love the church, you have to be willing to open your heart to see her. And you have to see her in the flesh, not in some piety, I almost, to tell you the truth, I almost reject any of the lives of the saints the way they're written, not the reality, but the way they're written, because to me they're as phony as a $3 bill. And they give you a false holiness. You want holiness? Look around you. You want the saints that you're living with them as they struggle day by day to be honorable and good people, as they retain their faith, not in some pious form, but step by step by living out their vocations best they can. Sometimes heroically, but most often quietly. I mean that. I saw that in the monks. I saw that in the people around me, in the parish. You want to see the life of the faith. Look at the people of the people of your neighborhood, the people of faith, whatever religions they have, and as they put it into their practices quietly, unexcitedly, just living out their vocations. That, to me, is the life of faith. They're to me, the saints in my life. When I think of the saints, I never think about the ones that are constructed by the church as examples. They're not examples to me of anything. You want to see fidelity, just look around. The guy in front of you is going day by day. Your parents, your grandparents, your friends, yourself, as you try to be as noble and good as you can be. If that isn't holiness, there is no such thing. Look at the lives of the saints. I'm talking about the New Testament account of this of the apostles. Got a bunch of stumble bums if they ever were, and they're beautiful. And who is more beautiful than Saint Peter? He's a stumble bum. He fouled it up every place he turned. It's 5 o'clock. You can see that. You see that? It was what a wonderful rock upon which to build church is built. It was built not on rock. It was built on the flesh of a peasant guy, a fisherman, a pescatore, a fisherman. You see? But he's beautiful because he is so raw in his fidelity to Christ. He is a mixed bag. He's humanity in the flesh. They all are. As I mentioned before, there is a genius in the group. That's St. John, a mystical genius, and eventually a theological genius in St. Paul. And they are architecturals. They are architects, as it were, in the architectural form of building the intellectual element of the church. Where would the church be without St. Paul's preaching? He saw the church for what it was, the body of Christ, and the mystical genius of St. John. But you know what? It was the preaching of St. Matthew. And the simple thing, bang, bang, bang. They were just getting it done, and they died for what they believed in. See? Again, the flesh of the church. I admire that. Some of the holiest men I ever lived with were some of the most human in our monasteries. The monasteries taught me, where I lived, taught me so much because I learned to live with the flesh of the church and saw how beautiful it was. I'm not kidding you, and I'm not talking about guys fingering a rosary, which they were doing, of course. I'm talking about the alcoholics, even the womanizers, struggling with their celibacy, struggling with their sobriety, but being faithful, still being faithful, persevering. I told you this story so many times. One of the fellows, and he had more problems than you can shake a stick at. I mean it. But when he died, he was whatever. But he had died a passionist. He had persevered. And I remember one of our teachers saying about him, he persevered. I hope you do the same. Meaning in the end, he was faithful, stubbornly faithful. I remember seeing him stagger into the dining room one day. He was so drunk. And I was scandalized. I was fresh out of novitiate. Now I remember him with enormous affection and love. I have his rosary. I think of him all, and the belt, the passion, my habit. Every time I put my habit on, especially Saturday mornings, I say Mass. I only say it in my habit with a stole. That's it. I take that rosary in my hand because I'm putting the belt on, and I'm putting on Terry. Yeah. Yep. Was he holy? You bet he was holy. Was he innocent? Far from it. But he was holy. Because he persevered. That's the truth. The monastery taught me what real beauty and what real holiness looked like. And it didn't look like the lives of the saints. It was in the flesh of the men who persevered. And I see that in marriage. St. Timothy, St. Mark's has taught me that. And I see people living out their marriages, living out their families, all the struggles that go with it. And I know I'm in the presence of the holy. Not the pious, it's the holy. And that's the truth. I see it every morning at Mass. I'll be there in an hour. People living their faith, living it quietly, unheroically, but definitely quietly heroic, in a heroic way. In the quietness of their lives as they go day by day, making a living, loving their family, persevering. That's the truth. Want holiness? Just look around. You're surrounded by it. And then look inside. You'll see it there too.